Before we start the session, let me give out the answers for the previous assignment. I hope you have done it. Check the answers as I read. First main, answer the following. How did Dada render help to Anjali? Answer. Anjali's grandfather helped her with her projects and maths syllabus. He walked with her to the bus stop. Second question. Why was cooking never a great activity in Anjali's house? Answer. Cooking was never a great activity because Anjali's mother would be exhausted when she got back from her office in the evening. Question 3. What did the grandparents announce? Answer. The grandparents announced that they would be going to Rita's place. Second main, write the plurals of the following words. Loaf, loaves, baby, babies, berry, berries, half, halves, fairy, fairies, thief, thieves. Third main, frame meaningful sentences for the following words. First one, habit. Switching off the lights when not in use is a good habit. Announced. The results of inter-class competition will be announced in the coming week. Silence. We should maintain silence in the library. Now, we'll move on to our today's session. Many of you have grandparents at home. To have a grandmother or grandfather is indeed a blessing. Do you like your grandparents? Yes. You enjoy being with them, isn't it, children? Because they have many interesting stories and experiences from their lives to share with you. They also play with you and help you in doing your homework. Especially your grandmother. She takes care of you and prepares your favorite dishes. So, grandparents play an important part in your life. They are a valuable resource. But having great grandparents is a boon to a child. If you have great grandparents, then you are very lucky. You can learn a lot of things from them. In this poem, the poet talks about his great grandmother. Children, do you know who is a great grandmother? Great grandmother is your grandmother's mother or your grandfather's mother. Now, children, let me tell you about the poet Alan Malley, who has written this poem, Great Grandmother. Alan Malley was born on 7th January 1931 at Surrey, England. He was an award-winning, internationally known writer and an artist. He has done a lot of research and has written many resource books for teachers. He died on 13th May 1995. Before we start the poem, let us understand the meanings of some new words in the poem. The first word is yellowing, means discolored or getting old. White paper turns yellow after a long period. The second word is misted, means dimmed, that is to become dull. Third word stern, means strict. Fourth word frank, means straightforward, that is to be honest. Fifth word recognize, means to understand, identify or to find. Sixth word bun, means a kind of hairstyle. Now, let us read and understand the poem Great Grandmother. I will recite the poem. Listen carefully, children. Great Grandmother by Alan Malley. She looks out at me from the yellowing photograph, misted over by time. It is a frank and serious look. Her eyes are stern, but they can laugh too. Her hair is pulled back tightly in a bun, and on her black dress she wears no jewelry. I never knew her, yet I recognize myself in her 3 generations later. May my great grandchildren feel as close to me as I now do to her. Children, you can recite the poem along with me now. She looks out at me from the yellowing photograph, misted over by time. It is a frank and serious look. Her eyes are stern, but they can laugh too. Her hair is pulled back tightly in a bun, and on her black dress she wears no jewelry. I never knew her, yet I recognize myself in her 3 generations later. May my great grandchildren feel as close to me as I now do to her. Now let's understand what the poet says about his great grandmother in this poem. Let's read the first few lines. She looks out at me from the yellowing photograph misted over by time. In these lines, the poet says he feels that his great grandmother is looking out at him from the yellowing photograph. Here, yellowing photograph means the color of the photo has changed to yellow. That means it has become old. The color has changed. You know, white paper turns yellow after a long period. Children, you must have noticed this change of color in your old notebooks. The color of white paper would have changed to yellow as the books become old. And the poet says, misted over by time. That means the photograph has dimmed, it has become dull, lost its shine over a long period of time. Let's move to the next few lines. It is a frank and serious look. Her eyes are stern, but they can laugh too. In these lines, the poet describes the looks of his great grandmother. He says, it is a frank and serious look. That means she has a serious and honest look. Her eyes are stern. Stern means strict. The poet says, though her eyes looks to be strict, he is sure that she was a humorous person and could laugh too. Now children, let's read the next few lines. Her hair is pulled back tightly in a bun, and on her black dress she wears no jewelry. So in these lines, the poet says, his great-grandmother's hair is neatly pulled back and tightly rolled into a bun-like shape at the back of her head. Now you all have seen buns which you get in the bakery. You like to eat them, isn't it? Can you tell me what is the shape of the bun? Yes, it is round. So look at the picture. You can see the hair rolled in the shape of a bun at the back of the head. So you must have seen your grandmothers also having this kind of hairstyle. Then in the next few lines, the poet talks about his great-grandmother's dress. The poet describes his great-grandmother's dress to be simple, as she wears a black sari without any jewelry. Then the next few lines, I never knew her, yet I recognize myself in her 3 generations later. Here the poet says, though he has not seen his great-grandmother in person, he feels that he is very close to her. He says he can recognize himself in her. He can identify himself in her as he has some of her qualities in him even after 3 generations have passed. Here the poet refers to the 3 generations, that is the poet's parents, the first generation, his grandparents, second generation, and great-grandparents, that is the third generation. So even after 3 generations have passed, the poet feels that he is very close to his great-grandmother. In the last few lines, he says, "May my great-grandchildren feel as close to me as I now do to her." So here the poet wishes that his great-grandchildren, born 3 generations later, also feel the same bonding that he feels towards his great-grandmother. Now that you have understood the poem, I will ask a few questions. Try to answer them, children. Question 1. Who wrote the poem Great Grandmother? Yes, the answer is the poem Great Grandmother is written by Alan Malley. Question 2. She looks out at me. What does this opening line of the poem mean? Yes, this line means that the poet feels as if his great grandmother is looking at him whenever he sees her photograph. Question 3. What expression does the poet read in the eyes of his great grandmother? Yes, the poet reads a frank and serious look in his great grandmother's eyes. Her eyes looked stern, but they could laugh too. Now, children, here is an interesting activity for you. Let's learn about the pronunciation of words. How words are pronounced in different ways. Let's take examples of few words. Look at the table. The first word, Jewelry, jewelry. This is taken from the poem. Now, for this word, Jewelry, the American pronunciation is jewelry, whereas the British pronunciation is jewelry. Now you repeat after me. Jewelry, American pronunciation, jewelry. British pronunciation, jewelry. Now I hope you can make out the difference between the two pronunciations. We'll go to the next example. Address. Here the American pronunciation is address. British pronunciation is address. So now you repeat after me. Address. American pronunciation, address. British pronunciation, address. The third example, vase. American pronunciation, vase. British pronunciation, was. You can repeat after me. Vase. American pronunciation is vase. British pronunciation is was. The fourth example, vitamin. American pronunciation, vitamin. British pronunciation, vitamin. You can repeat after me. vitamin. American pronunciation, vitamin. British pronunciation, vitamin. So, there is a difference in pronunciation of the word. Now, let's repeat. The first word, Jewelry. American pronunciation is jewelry, whereas British pronunciation is jewelry. The second example, address. American pronunciation is address, whereas British pronunciation is address. The third example, vase. American pronunciation is vase, whereas British pronunciation is was. Fourth word, vitamin, American pronunciation, vitamin, whereas British pronunciation, vitamin. I hope you have understood the difference between American pronunciation and British pronunciation. Usually, we Indians use the British pronunciation as we were ruled by the British before independence. But nowadays, the American pronunciation is becoming popular. You can also find out the pronunciation for some more words. It will be an interesting activity for you. Now let's go to the second main. Pick out the word from the poem which means the photograph is old. Think of the answer. Yes, the word from the poem which means the photograph is old is the word yellowing. Third main, write a few qualities of your grandmother that you would like to adopt from her. For this, you can write the answer in your own sentences. What qualities you like in your grandmother and what you would like to adopt from her. Now that we have read and understood the poem Great Grandmother, let's summarize what we have learnt in the poem. In this poem, the poet talks about his great grandmother. The poet feels as if his great grandmother is looking at him when he sees her photograph. The photograph has become old, discolored, and dimmed over a long period of time. The poet describes the look of his great grandmother to be honest and serious. She seemed to be strict, but the poet was sure that she was a humorous person too. The poet describes her dress to be simple as she wears a sari without any jewelry and her hair neatly pulled back tightly in a bun. Even though the poet had not seen his great grandmother, he feels that he has some of her qualities. The poet also wishes that his great grandchildren, born 3 generations later, also feel the same bonding that he feels towards his great grandmother. Here is an assignment for you. First main, answer the following questions. What has happened to the photograph? Question 2. What were the feelings that the poet experienced when he looked at the photograph of his great grandmother? Question 3. Describe the poet's great grandmother as she appears in the photograph. Second main, memorize and write the poem Great Grandmother. Answer all the questions in your notebook. We will discuss the answers in the next class. Thank you.